Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Zelenskyy. Donald Trump's second term in office has already seen multiple examples of unorthodox policymaking, including in the field of foreign policy. The new administration's stance on Ukraine has in particular raised many eyebrows, with both the harsh treatment of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the Oval Office and the mounting pressure on Ukraine, including through restrictions being placed on US support. This weekend, the public was shocked by another instance of unconventional behaviour, this time featuring top White House officials publicly berating Poland's foreign minister after he asserted Warsaw's stance on the Starlink satellite system's role in the Ukraine war. But the bigger question is, are these symptoms indicative of a deeper malady affecting American politics today? Joining us now is Maciej Kisilowski, Associate Professor at the Central European University. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning.
So first of all, I would appreciate your comment on this Twitter exchange between Poland's Foreign Minister Sikorski and members of the Trump administration. This was quite shocking because once again we can see that the style of diplomacy that we have become accustomed to throughout the years apparently is being thrown right out of the window by the US administration today.
Well, it's not shocking to me. My colleague, Professor Anna Wojciuk from Warsaw University, and I wrote last week a comment in Foreign Policy where we showed that all those moves are surprising only if we don't take the simplest and most straightforward explanation of them, which is that American administration is fundamentally more ideologically aligned with authoritarian regimes like Putin's Russia or Orban's Hungary than with liberal democracy. Okay, that's very unfortunate, but going through this constant ritual of being shocked, being surprised, every time the American administration behaves like a far-right authoritarian regime is starting to get a little tired. And I think more and more people are seeing that these are not isolated incidents. You mentioned a few examples, but the support of far-right parties, especially for Poland, of course, the most dangerous one is AfD because it questions Poland's western border with Germany, and it's openly supported by both J.D. Vance and Elon Musk. The withdrawal of support, which is already leading, has led to actual brave Ukrainian soldiers killed, especially in the Kursk region. This is not a theoretical or rhetorical exercise. It's people losing their lives. The Georgescu pressure to keep the pro-Russian candidate, supported most likely by the Russian security forces in the presidential race. The statement by Mr. Trump that EU, and I quote, was set up to take advantage of the United States. All of those things are, again, shocking only if we don't take the most simple explanation. We have seen how right-wing authoritarians govern. We have seen it in Hungary. We had seen it for a few years in Poland. We see it in Turkey. We see it in Russia. And it's just more of the same, both in terms of the policy objectives and certain substance of how they conduct domestic and foreign policy. The rants of Elon Musk or angry statements by Secretary Rubio are not that different from rants of in the European Parliament by Viktor Orban. Anybody can go online and see and compare. This is a very similar style of communication between those two regimes.
So there seems to be like an ideological affinity there, but is this sufficient to say that America has or is becoming authoritarian? I'm also asking this question because the most important thing is obviously how to deal with this situation. Again, Poland ranks itself as one of the top allies in the region, questionable exchanges on Twitter or not. And of course, it would be beneficial for us to maintain a degree of cooperation there, but I'm assuming that we have to learn how to approach this new style of governance in the United States because we're not going to wish it away. So would you say that we're still capable of building some sort of new consensus, a new equilibrium, despite the fact that certainly America is changing right before our eyes.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are two questions, both very good, that you are asking, in fact. One is whether the constitutional revolution that we before saw in Russia, Hungary, attempted constitutional revolution in Poland, successful one in Turkey, whether this is happening in America. And I think the answer is unquestionably yes. All the executive orders that are undermining even the most directly constitutional provisions like birthright citizenship, targeting of specific, disliked perhaps outgroups like trans people. This is classic authoritarian playbook to find the kind of hated minority that is somehow endangering us or creating that kind of perception. So these are the moves. Now, of course, the question is that we are talking about a very unique democracy, the oldest democracy, one of the oldest democracies in the world, and the institutions of the democracy are very strong. So the conventional wisdom is that Trump will have much tougher job overthrowing the constitutional system of the United States than, let's say, Viktor Orban had in Hungary, because the institutions and also certain culture, certain muscle memory of even conservative lawyers, governmental officials will be very strong. That's true. But I want to unfortunately bring another side of this, which is that also it is true that the aspiring authoritarians in Washington, D.C. have much greater tools, much more powerful tools at their disposal than, let's say, Mr. Kaczynski or Mr. Orban had. They have much more competent people. Whatever you say about Elon Musk, he is, of course, very competent manager. He builds successful businesses, and
he controls the social media platform also.
Yes, so we are talking about the kind of institutional walls protecting American democracy are much higher and much stronger than the ones that were protecting Polish or Hungarian or Russian democracy. But the barbarians at the gate have much stronger weapons as well. And the question is how the result of these two stronger forces will balance out over the next two years. And at the end, as you see in those constitutional revolutions, especially in Poland, in the kind of popular rebellion against a similar right-wing constitutional revolution that happened during the election in 2023, which ousted the right-wing Law and Justice government from power, it all comes to the American people. The American people elected Mr. Trump, but not by a landslide, by one of the smallest popular vote majority in recent decades. And the question is whether whether all people who supported Mr. Trump really supported the constitutional revolution that he is now undertaking, or they supported, lower prices, better economy. Once they realize what will happen, once they realize that they are not getting what they sign up for, they are getting a lot of extras. They are getting a kind of a Putin-esque system as an extra on top of what they asked for. If they rebel, most probably in the midterms, then if there is a blue wave in the midterms, then it's going to be very difficult to conclude this constitutional revolution by Mr. Trump.
So the future is to be actually decided at the ballot boxes in the US. But in the meantime, coming back to the second, the second issue that I've mentioned. How do we actually deal with the Trump administration now? Because, of course, it might be uncomfortable given that our government has different priorities. We have different priorities in our region, seemingly, than the Trump administration. We want to help Ukraine. They want to enforce a peace deal regardless of the costs associated with that. But we also, we have to accept the fact that this is what the American people have chosen. So effectively, the question is, are we going to, as the political elites also in Europe remain outraged at the fact that Trump is there and he's doing things that we do not accept, Or should we adopt the sort of Trump whisperer approach and learn how to live with that, at least until some changes could be introduced in elections once again further down the line?
Well, this is, as I said, an excellent point, because we generally need to start, making our way, finding our way to coexist with authoritarian regimes, authoritarian states. We need to disabuse ourselves of this end of history dream that there are only liberal democracies, that we can cordon off every non-democratic, illiberal country. That's not going to happen. It's not only Mr. Trump. There is the similar revolution going on in India with Mr. Modi. Of course, China is nominally communist, but in fact it's the same story. It's the nationalist authoritarian regime. So we need to coexist because there are global public goods that require cooperation across the ideological lines. So we need to be pragmatic. I think the first step is to stop being shocked, to basically admit the reality that we are dealing with an illiberal regime that wants to fundamentally change America. It's a revolutionary, illiberal revolutionary regime. And that these are their objectives. But it still can be the case that their interests will coincide more with Europe than with other powers. And then we should cooperate pragmatically, especially since right-wing authoritarians have a big weakness, which is their egoism also makes it more difficult for them to cooperate. Yes, it's very clear in many examples. Let's say Hungary right-wing versus Romania right-wing. They are fighting with each other because, of course, Hungarian nationalists want to have part of the Romanian territory, which Romanian nationalists don't want. There are multiple examples in which the right-wing nationalists cannot form the coalitions. Yes, the AfD with Marine Le Pen, they can't, because even for the right-wing French, Nazi references of the AfD are one bridge too far. Many people, as we know, died in France.
So there are major differences there. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, which is regrettable, because this is a fascinating subject in itself. Hopefully, we might be able to explore it in the near future. For the time being, Maciej Kisilowski was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'm Nasz Lewiński. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.